Welcome back to Wilderness Navigation, where we have our concluding session. All right, so we're going to step back and review. All right, so landscape literacy is where we began this process. I had visitors over the weekend, and they were driving from Prescott to Cortez Junction to visit. They were approaching 169, and their GPS unit said turn north on 169 to get to Cortez Junction. They called and asked me, should they do this? Negative. All right. It's very important, you know, and technology is great. However, it cannot replace your own intelligence. As we have said in our survival session, the most important survival kit item is between your two ears. All right, you have to think and understand what's going on around you. And the land gives you a lot of background information. The sun is going to rise where it rises, and north is going to be north regardless of what city you're in, what mountain you're in the northern hemisphere. All right, so having that as a background filter is important. So landscape literacy is where it begins. Next, we looked at a map, topo map, and an orienteering compass. And then we looked at how you use those in conjunction with the land to put it all together. Then we head out. We test what we know. We get lost, usually park, where we don't know precisely where we are. We know about where we are, but we don't know exactly where we are. And that's where the map and the compass. And then we used a GPS unit to confirm which of the 3 points we were at. Now, I wanted to make sure, because we're going to do the same steps today, once we know where we are, we're going to want to get to where we want to be. And that's ultimately back home, okay? So, it's a simple 1, 2, 3, all right? And if you'll notice my little circle, all right, all this is a simple geometric exercise. The compass is simply a protractor measuring angles. When we took a reading off of that mountain, all we're doing is taking off of magnetic north, and the map's been converted to magnetic north, so it speaks the same language as the compass, and we measure this angle all the way around here to end up with 330 some odd, whatever it was, right? And we just measure that angle. We are a point, this is a point, we draw the line, we're on the line. Point the compass, the direction of travel arrow at the point. Spin the dial so that the lines inside line up with that needle. Read the number, okay? That's the bearing. That's all that we're doing. 1, 2, 3. Point, spin, read the number. You don't need a big manual. You don't need a lot of technical mumbo jumbo. It's very simple. Then you repeat the process. We measure this angle and this angle with the compass and draw the lines on the map, okay? Now we know where we are. Now before we even leave the home, we're going to plan our route. Now I've included a map of the park, and so you have that basic in your head along with the terrain where north, south, east, and west are and so forth. And you have some idea about the trail system. You know about where we are. And we can use then the topo map, Apache Junction, and we're going to go from point 1 to 2, so we're going to have an established route, and it's going to give us that number of the course we're going to follow, and it's the same process as the 1, 2, 3. We're going to point the compass going from the first known point to the second known point. We're going to spin the dial till it lines up with the lines on the map, and then we're going to read the number, and that's all that we're going to do. And then we're going to stand up, and we're going to hold that compass level, and we're going to turn our whole body until the needle inside lines up with the lines in the dial. and then we're going to follow in the direction, always of the direction of travel arrow. So we plan out 2 courses, 2 routes, before we even get out the door, okay? So, and I'll show you pictures of where those places are. But we're going to have one route, 35 degrees. That's the route we're going to follow, and we plan that out, lay it out before we get out the door, and then we're going to go from that second point to the third point. That's 294 degrees. That's the measure of that angle off of magnetic north from where we are, point 2, to the final point, point 3. Okay? That's all it is. Now, the only question before we get out the door is how to get from where we are when we're lost to the first known destination at the end of our initial hike. Okay? Step 1. There's 3 steps. From where we find out where we are to where we want to be, and then back all the way to where we began. All right, so we know what our second and third routes are. We just have to establish the first route. Okay, so we saw that terrain, what it looked like, and now we know where we are. In the last one, we are lost no more. So there we are going to go from the first route to the second route, and we have our GPS unit with us, and we're going to use that, and we can also measure it with the map, with the compass. We're going to look ahead through all that nice, really cool teddy bear choya that's going to get stuck in your feet as you hike along. Yeah, it will. All right, and so we can look at the GPS. It's going to tell us we have 3/4 of a mile to go, 0.77 miles. And it tells us that we're going in a southwesterly direction, okay? And the compass, of course, is telling us the same thing because it's giving us that number, which is in that same direction. Remember, north, 0 or 360. South is 180. A straight line is 180 degrees. East, 90. West, 270. So those numbers we keep in mind, so that if we take a bearing, we think we're heading south and we get a bearing of 35 degrees, you're not going to end up south, you're going to end up north. So pay attention to the numbers. It's got to make sense. Everything you do, does this make sense? Okay, so as we start out from near the staging area to our first point, which is towards the highway down there, the edge of the park, we're going to cross 3 trails. And as we make our progress along the way, we're going to, oh, okay, this is a trail. I'm on the right track. And I put a picture of the trail, and you can see the superstitions to the east, okay? Because this trail is Blevins Trail, and it's running east and west right there, okay? Okay, we're confirming everything. Everything that you're doing is reinforcing, and you're constantly keeping a check on yourself. When Don and Diana went out there, and I was with them going from where we found ourselves to be to point number 1, we all drift. And when you have 2 people like that, they can keep a check on each other. You can take a reading and average the numbers because you're constantly trying to improve your accuracy. Okay, so they had a tendency to drift a little bit to one side. I have a tendency to drift a little bit as well, and so you're going to take a bearing and you're going to look out across the desert and you're going to see a saguaro or a palo verde or something a couple hundred yards out in front of you, and you're going to walk from where you are to that point, and then you're going to do it again. You're going to pick another tree or palo or a saguaro or something, but again, you'll drift, and so you pick a point, a saddle, way up on the horizon, and you're constantly moving to make sure that you don't end up over here, because as you go out, a little bit of error compounds itself. So you're constantly aiming for that saddle on the horizon as a correction to your tendency to drift. You don't want to be adrift. All right, so we cross the trail, the Blevins Trail, east and west, and then we're looking at the park map and we're seeing, okay, there's a trail that goes north and south. We come across that trail, okay? And then we finally come to the vicinity of the point that we're aiming for, all right? And that, as we continue to look at our GPS, it continues to tell us, oh, now you're 200 feet away. Oh, now you're 50 feet away, and so forth. It's going to tell you your progress. And so use it as a check. You don't ignore the other factors, you don't ignore, the terrain, but it's another piece of information, and that's what you're constantly evaluating, all right? Now, we get to the first point. Pretty simple, and we're going to repeat the steps, and as I've had groups out there, each leg of this journey, they get better and better with their accuracy, okay? Now remember that maps are made, they're to a particular scale, and there's going to be, when you shrink the land down 24,000 times and put it on a piece of paper, you're a little tiny bit off on that piece of paper, it's going to be compounded in the real world. And so you've got to understand that and make constant adjustments. All right. So I showed you a picture there of the road and our next junction near that road, which is the south entrance to the park. Crimson Road Gate, you'll see the sign, and on the Levee Trail, all right, and that is our next starting point, because we found our first intersection, came down to this point. Now we're going to head back north, bearing of 35 degrees, and we look at our GPS again, and it's going to tell us, because I plotted those points before I even left the house. I knew where on the map that they were, and I entered those points as waypoints on the GPS unit before I even left the door. I put in the longitude and latitude, what they were, based upon what the topo map told me. So now I just go to the GPS, I say find waypoint 3. And it tells me how far it is, it tells me the direction that it is. Okay, so it's a tool, but like my friends that are, and I see this in Cortez Junction every day when I come to the library at Spring Valley. People get off I-17 and they try to get back on 17 the way they get off, but the roundabouts don't work that way, the exits don't work that way. And I see people, they're not reading the signs, the street signs, and they're going around and around and around in those roundabouts. And these are truckers sometimes, but I'm sure they're listening to their phone. It says, okay, take a right at 100 yards or something, and it's not where they think they're going. So don't over-rely on the technology, okay? The machines get smarter, so the people get fill in the blank. All right, now we're looking again, we're gonna point the compass on that bearing, spin the dial so it lines up with the map, okay, and then we're going to read the number. And now we stand up, we take that compass, we line up ourselves to where the needle now lines up with the lines in the dial, looking always ahead in the direction of travel arrow, and we pick out the Saguaro, the Palo Verde, the point on the horizon that we're going to aim for, and we head out. The GPS is now telling us it's 3/4 of a mile, okay, northeasterly direction. So we see Pass Mountain out there, and we see the landscape before us, okay, so it's a pretty clear shot. Arizona's very fortunate. We are fortunate in Arizona. We don't have all those horrible green things called trees to block our view, so we can see where we're going. Isn't that exciting? Okay. You'll notice I have a picture in there of a barrel cactus, which is going to confirm again it is tilting slightly to the southwest, right? Which is behind us now. So again, confirmation, things are lining up the way that they are supposed to do. Now we're going to come to a confusing part, because as the park map tells us, the Blevins Trail, the No-So Trail, these other trails is not the one that we're aiming for. It's one a little bit to the east, okay? So don't just jump on the first intersection you come to, oh, I'm done. No, we're not done. We're learning. That's what it's about. We have to follow through, okay? So we can see we're a little bit south of that junction of Blevins and the No-So Trail. Our destination is still a little bit to the east of that intersection, okay? Because there's all kinds of trails in there. And when you use the map, which has been printed with this information on it, that's what we're going with. I don't go out there and put a pile of rocks and measure it and decide that's the point we're aiming at. No, the map's already been created, it's been standardized, it's been established, it's been validated, okay? So I have great confidence in the accuracy of the information. Now we need to test our accuracy to follow through to find it, okay? So we come to the intersection and we continue east though, because we're not there yet. Now the GPS once again tells us, even though I'm right on the intersection, it's in a wash, so you can't see it until you're right on top of it, okay? And that's to test you to see that you're actually following through with the information in hand. So even though I'm standing on the point, it tells me I'm 200 feet away from where it thinks that it is. Okay, again, there's that scale, all right, that's going to introduce a certain margin of error. You have to anticipate that. You have to look around and say, oh, I'm in a wash, and it says I'm on a ridge. Okay, you have to, does it make sense? And figure it out. All right, so we see that trail a little bit east of the Noso-Blevins Junction, and we find our intersection in the wash. 1 point to go, which we've already measured. It's at 294-degree angle. Okay, now we're heading in what direction? Westerly, because west is 270. Okay, so we're going to cut right back across to where we started out, aiming for a point that is a little over half a mile away is all, okay? And once again, it's valuable to be, as you can see in the pictures, the desert, it's lumpy. You got to go around obstacles, and reason you pick that saguaro, that Palo Verde, whatever, okay, you can't just walk in a straight line through that clump of cholla. You're going to have to go around it. But that's okay, you just put the compass down, you put the GPS down, pocket, whatever, and you go to that Palo Verde, you go to that saguaro, because you're going to get there however you can. You're not just going to go off the cliff and then, get there. You're going to have to go around, but you have those leapfrog points that you're connecting. Connect the dots all the way to the end, okay? Keep the point on the horizon in mind, where you're headed. Again, look at that, another compass barrel, and you can see the contrast with the saguaro. The compass barrel is telling direction. The saguaros do not, okay? Confirmation. Continuing, stay on course. Now I come to the point where I can see the trail junction through the brush, 291 feet away. This is the best accuracy so far on this route, and that's usually what happens. People get better as they just realize how important it is to pay attention to detail and to stay on course, okay? All right, so we see that the intersection is finally there, that bench with the trail junction. Now the 44 though that I was looking at is actually our final distance to get back to the staging area where we began, 0.44 miles. This is the fun part. As I've had a group, they've gone all these points, all these distances, and they come to this third point, whew, it's over. They're so glad, but it's not over until it's over. So we head back on the Blevins Trail to connect the loop back to the staging area, and they come to an intersection. Boom, they go right to the left. They have a half a mile to go to where the car is, but they took the first out because they are so exhausted. This is why people never hike with me again. I have all these notches on my staff. Kidding. All right, so you have to get to that intersection, and does it make sense to bail right here and go to the left? We've covered all that distance. We can't go 30 yards and figure now it's the same thing as a half a mile. You have to, does this make sense? Okay? As I was confirming and testing all this and updating all my information, there were two people on mountain bikes coming towards me. And of course I made fun of the guy that was behind the lead rider. He said, "I can't hear you, I had all this loud music playing." Okay, please don't do that. Don't tune the environment out, tune it in. That's why we're out there. To listen, to observe, to experience. And so you've got to be aware, situational awareness all the time, and pay attention. So, half a mile or a little less to get back to the staging area. We completed the route, landscape literacy, map and compass, lost no more. Now we've made it home because we're competent, and there is nothing that is going to give you a sense of confidence and peace of mind when you're in the wilderness, a mountain range you've never been to, a trail system you've never experienced, than having a sound understanding of how to use these tools and to read the land, so that you will be lost again, and it's okay. Just figure it out, press on, get home. See you next time.